also in Atlantic City. I am pleased to have each of you here. I begin with you, Steve. Tell me what it is about Sinatra that makes him the legend that he is, that makes him the person that so many people are compelled by.
Surely the answer has to be the music. But in the music and the lyrics, to me, Sinatra has always had and does have an uncanny ability to portray in context the lyrics of the music that he sings on an intellectual, emotional basis that is quite unique and unequaled by anybody else that I've ever heard. And yet, what is phenomenal about it is that it is mostly instinctive. And if you had more time, I want to ask him about that.
We'll talk more about that.
That's always been the thing that fascinates me.
We got lots of stories this evening as we talk about it. In 1965, a piece may have been published in '66 in Esquire. You said, "He is the champ who made the big comeback. The man who had everything, lost it, then got it back, letting nothing stand in his way, doing what few men could do. He uprooted his life, left his family, broke with everything that was familiar, learning in the process that one way to hold a woman is not to hold her." Just part of what you said. Tell me about Sinatra.
Well, I think
and
the quality, you're asking the quality that he seems to personify to all of us, and all of us will probably have a different vantage point on the subject. To me, it's endurance. I think Sinatra, with all the deference to the lyrics and the stage presence, but the endurance of the man, realizing that for the better part of a half a century he's been on top. Granted, he's had his falls, and that reference testifies to that. But to be an entertainer in that most perilously of reckless professions, to be able to appeal to different
honesty.
That's my opinion.
I asked him once about, we were alone, we were on a plane. We were flying from Providence or something to Atlantic City, and I said to him, "Okay, I need to have you explain this to me. It's January 10th, 1956. You're going to go in the studio in 2 hours with Nelson Riddle, and you're going to record 3 of the cuts for Music for Swingin' Lovers. You're going to do On the Road from Providence or something to Atlantic City." And I said to him, "Okay, I need to have you explain this to me. It's January 10th, 1956. You're going to go in the studio in 2 hours with Nelson Riddle, and you're going to record 3 of the cuts for Music for Swingin' Lovers. You're going to do On the Road to Mandalay, Swingin' Down the Lane, and I've Got You Under My Skin." Okay, you know the lyrics, you know the words. He says, yeah. I said, "How do you do it? What did you do? How do you do it?"
January 12th.
Well, it was the 9th, the 11th,
10, 11,
and the 12th.
12, yeah.
But the particular 3 cuts I'm talking about were done on the 11th.
I'm just joking.
Okay, it really is. I mean, I'm a nut about the album notes. And I said, "What did you do?" He said, "You mean how?" I said, "Yeah, I mean, what's the technique? How do you get ready?" He says, "Well, there's all the musicians in the room, and I go in like I do when I'm rehearsing for a show at the hotel. I sit at the piano and I listen to the arrangement. I've learned the lyrics." He says, "But what I do first is I take the lyric sheet and I think of it as a part in a play, like a movie. And I say, who is this talking?" Now, that was pretty light stuff. The Cole Porter lyrics, he said, were pretty straightforward, and I think about the position, the point of view, like a part in a play of the person who's doing the singing. And I say the lines over and over again to myself until I think I've got that point of view straight. Then I have Nelson and the band go through the arrangement to make sure I understand it, make any adjustments to speed it up, soften it up at this place for that phrase or that phrase. And then we sing it. You got it? What else you want to know? He had the Jack Daniels in his hands. I said, "That's it?" He says, "That's it. What is that's it." Yeah. He says, "It's a part. You got to imagine, you have to put yourselves in the position of the people who are the person who's singing it." And the fact of the matter is that that's exactly what he did. It was a function of his imagination. And like all great artists who can expand their imagination and make it identify, whether it's Picasso or Sinatra, there's a magic that takes place, an instinct that kicks in.
He was an interpretive musician. That is to say, he interpreted what someone else wrote. Unlike, let's say, Bob Dylan, who wrote his own. and then leapt on
He
the
was
stage.
the actor, not the playwright.
This fellow was the messenger who raced across
sir.
the Paul Revere of music.
And he thought of himself that way. At least that's how I deduced that little vignette, that little story that I told you. Because I remember it happening that night. It was in January and it was freezing cold, and that's how he explained it to me.
How was he before an audience? When he was performing before a live audience at the Nugget or other
Depended,
places?
as Gay said, it depended on circumstances. Frank's mood I think of it in very positive terms. When Frank's voice is on, he's in ecstasy. He is absolutely in
That's
ecstasy.
what Gay's piece was about.
Yes.
The opposite.
And if Frank's voice is not
Sinatra has a
perfect,
cold, yeah.
then he is not as happy. But since everything has to do with his music, especially if we're talking in the context of a performance, where I knew him so often, he would, if he was feeling good, there was an ebullience, a dancing spirit. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect. If he had a problem, if he had one time, I remember at the Nugget in Las Vegas, he was working with Willie Nelson, and that was the weekend he found out about the polyps that he had at that particular time. He was singing a song, and all of a sudden he felt something from another, very familiar in his throat, because this had happened to him many years before, when he ended up recuperating with Chester Babcock III, alias
Jimmy Van Heusen.
Jimmy Van Heusen.
Yeah.
But Sinatra felt that, and then the minute his voice went off, he would be very upset and very tense. Gay had that experience with him, but he was so focused on his music that it affected. Frank used to rehearse every time he ever worked. He only cared about, and all his life, only cared about the music and the enjoyment of the audience. At the root of it all, you read so much about his self-centeredness or his emotions. At the root of everything that Frank Sinatra ever did as a public performer was an absolute dedication, slavish dedication, to his audience. Consideration.
He had to prove himself like any of us.
And
Any artist does, whether you're
Yeah,
talking about Hemingway.